Hi there, Phil and Andrew here again from the Thomas and Fagianis bar. Continuing on talking about our cocktail program, and today we're talking about different ways to be serving drinks. Not necessarily in the traditional form, also preparing those drinks and trying to get ahead of some seasons. So got a couple of things for you today. One is a bit of a sneak peek, but before we get into that, one of our favorite drinks and one of those that we've been doing now for about a month and a half comes in a bottle. When you do settle up to the bar and you decide you want an old Cuban, in our case, it's going to be a bottled old Cuban. So how the heck does it get in that bottle? It's really a little bit more simple than it looks, but there is a process behind it, and today we're going to shed some light on that, or I should say, Andrew here is going to shed some light on that. I'm just the pretty assistants off to the side. So Andrew, if you want to take it away for us.
Sure. So we try to feature a lot of different techniques as well as ingredients, different methods to prepare drinks, and one of them is a prepared cocktail. In fact, we have that in another fashion with our Negroni on tap. It's funny, even though these things are clearly stated on the menu as Negroni on tap or bottled old Cuban, it's always very funny to witness people's reaction when you in fact set these things in front of them in a bottle or pour their drinks out of a tap. So it's something that people just aren't really quite used to yet. So we're trying to help show different ways, different methods in order to introduce drinks that are A, delicious, B, expedient, and 3, consistent. So that's something, those last 2 points I think really are beneficial across the board for people who are working as well as people who are ordering drinks. As we know, whenever you're at a bar that tries to have a craft cocktail program that's trying to do fun things, a little bit outside the scope of your standard bar situation, it can be a little dicey, especially waiting around for drinks. So this is a great way to have something that's featured that can be in their hands practically immediately without sacrificing quality, without sacrificing integrity, keeping true to standard principles while being a great boon to bartenders, especially when they're being slammed. Have something that's easy, delicious. You don't feel like a beer? That's great. We have cocktails that can satisfy your urge to have something really, really interesting as well as something that's immediate. So that being said, we're always going to feature bottled cocktails and cocktails on tap with our program, with all of our programs through Abrico Hospitality. So with that being said, let's get into how we create this. And it's actually very simple. We take all of the constituent parts and just combine them, throw them in bottle. We have these great access with Napa fermentation here in Napa to do just whatever it is that we want. While we're not brewing beer yet, maybe at some point, or cider, who knows, there's still a lot of great simple things there that allow us to feature things like this bottled cocktail. So why don't I start building this up here, and we're going to start layering in flavors. So in case you don't know, in case you haven't had it before, an old Cuban is something that I think most people would like. Whenever we create cocktails and feature them on the list, we want to have broad appeal in terms of, are men going to like it, are women going to like it, appeal throughout different age categories. And this is something that I think we've done pretty well with the bottled cocktail. Since there is a sparkling element of this cocktail, and these aren't perfectly sealed bottles, we want to have things that will move relatively fast. We don't want these drinks to stagnate and lose their great refreshing quality that comes from the bubbles that we incorporate. So what we're going to do is take our Bacardi 8. I still didn't get to my original point though. Old Cuban, created I believe in 2008 by Audrey Saunders, who's a very noted cocktail authority based out of New York. Her restaurant, or her bar out there, is called Peggy Club, in tribute to the classic British colonial cocktail featuring gin and lime and curacao and bitters. It's a really wonderful cocktail. If you haven't tried it, it's pretty awesome. If you like margaritas, there's a good chance that you'll like a Pegu Club. It's essentially kind of like a gin-based margarita with a few extra, bells and whistles thrown on there. So, really great cocktail, really wonderful cocktail haven and destination for anybody who's out there in New York looking for a lovely, lovely cocktail. I still don't think I mentioned exactly what's in an old Cuban. Think mojito. Mojitos, delicious. Who doesn't love a really well-crafted mojito? This has a bit more depth and complexity to it. We feature aged rum, in this case the Bacardi 8-year-old. You might think, why would we use a big brand name like Bacardi? This is actually a really wonderful product. With the additional aging, it develops smoother qualities, more rounded, deeper caramel-influenced notes that are going to make the drink quite excellent. And instead of using sparkling water, we're going to feature sparkling wine. Beyond that, it's very, very similar to mojito. We're going to have mint, we're going to have lime, we're going to have sugar, and we're also going to feature some aromatic bitters, which will just further give some more depth and breadth to the cocktail. So, I think I have all of my mise en place pretty much here for me. I'm going to start with a nice handful of mint. And whenever we have mint, we want to express the aromatics that are in there. We're just going to lightly kind of crumple it up. You can just be really cavalier about it. Just give it a nice little crush. Smell. You can already smell it, I'm sure, from across the room. And that will be the base as we're building flavors. So it looks like I have 4 bottles here. I'll be making 4 of these drinks. And this is a really simple ratio to follow. Basically, it's 2 parts of rum to 1 part of lime juice to 1 part of our mint syrup that we make in-house. We're going to really kind of compound that mint quality within the drink. And it'll have about 2 dashes of Angostura bitters per drink, so 8 dashes all day. So if I'm doing, let's do some quick math, 3/4 of an ounce times 4, I believe is 3 ounces. I have my handy little jigger here. We're always going to be using accurate measurement. And this will be 3 ounces total of mint syrup with mint. I know I've already kind of expressed the oils within the mint. I just want to kind of get everything to play together nice. I have my little stirring rod here. I'm just going to work that in there a little bit. So we have our sweet component. We need to balance that with some sour. It's hard to have refreshing cocktails without some sort of acidity or bitterness. In this case, you can get away with using mint like you would in a mint julep. But this kind of has all of those elements. It has bitters, it has acidity, it has aromatic complexity. It's going to be a very, very well-rounded drink. So we have the same amount of lime that we do sugar. And just to make sure that we're on the right track, we're going to give it a little taste. It's kind of like cooking. You always want to kind of taste as you go, adjust seasoning when necessary. So that's tasting pretty spot on. We're going to layer in another round of flavor with the aromatic bitters. Kind of a fun looking bottle. This is just Angostura bitters. We try to have nice fun little tchotchke things at the bar to make it just, appearance does count for something. And again, talking about, consistency and uniformity throughout the bar program or any sort of, food endeavor, you want to have that be a kind of a paramount principle. And while there is a great boom of bitters out there, they're all in different bottles with different rates of pour. So this allows us to, hone in on that consistency aspect that is so important to pretty much any sort of successful endeavor. I think that principle can apply pretty broadly. So that's 3, 4, 5, and finally 6 ounces of Bacardi 8, just enough. And again, we're going to just incorporate everything in here and make sure that it's tasting oh so lovely. which I have a strong suspicion that it will. All right, but you never can tell until you give it the old taste test, the old strong test. All right, that's tasting pretty good. Now, we're going to keep things kind of rustic. We're just going to free-form pour this into the bottles. And this might get a little drippy. In fact, can you grab a little something to work this into? I'm going to strain out the mint, but if I did it directly into the bottles, the mint is going to kind of make it pour out all different sort of weird sides. We don't want that. We worked to get everything in here. We don't want to have a nice puddle of delicious cocktail. Not in the glass, because then it will not be in our bellies. And just one final bit of expression. Make sure we get all the liquid as well as any little bit of essential oils within the mint that might yet be unexpressed. And just for easy pouring purposes, it's a bit easier to pour out of the tin for me than with a glass. So let's see if I can just work that on in there. And through experience, I've known that it comes, actually, it'll be a little bit lower. So this is kind of interesting because normally I'd add an ingredient that you wouldn't normally think to add. In this case, we're going to make these a bit more forceful. Normally I'd add a little bit of water because when you think about it, when you're, that's one of the unsung, forgotten ingredients in pretty much all cocktails. Whenever you're stirring a drink, whenever you're shaking a drink, you're not just chilling it, you're diluting it, which really sometimes gets lost in the mix, especially when we're doing something like this, when we're doing, cocktails on draft. So it sounds odd. It sounds like maybe we're just kind of, stretching our ingredients, but actually it does play an important role. But in this case, we're just going to stretch it with more cava. Now, you could use any sort of sparkling wine that you have on hand. It doesn't matter if you wanted to. Champagne would be awesome. Prosecco would work just fine. We like cava because it comes in at a really nice price point, but it's also very dry. Very, has a nice kind of, what would you say, kind of flinty sort of quality to it, Phil?
Yeah.
Flinty. At this point, I'm just going to kind of give it the old eyeball, the old hairy eyeball, make sure that they're relatively equal. For these purposes, they don't have to be perfect, but we want them to be good because we're going to be enjoying them. We don't want them to be out of balance. So I think that's pretty good right here. Now, something that took me a while to get everybody on the same board was how to gently get, in this case, the Segura Vidas cava into here without deflating the bubbles as much as possible. What works best is if you can get maybe two, about all I need is about two people, a little assembly line sort of a thing going on, somebody filling, somebody capping, because as soon as this bottle is open, as soon as we add it to the drink, you're losing CO2. You want to retain that as much as possible. So while this might be more efficient just to fill everything up all in once and then cap, we're actually going to do what might be a little bit intuitively backwards. We're going to fill it and then cap it, fill it, then cap it, so on until we have all of our drinks. This one doesn't want to play nice.
It's always fun. We'll do these like 18 at a time, just line them across the bar, and you get a little audience to come in and look.
So,
what do you have here? What are these jaws of life?
The jaws of life. The jaws of life. These are great little hand cappers that you can use for any sort of homemaking, home brewing process, or in the case for us, we're going to use it for our bottled cocktail. So we have fun little tags on here stating what it is and, of course, where to get it. And let's follow suit with the rest of these bad boys.
DDA, we're going to need to come on out here. Very important role DDA is going to play here.
Yes. It's a difficult job, but
QC.
I'm sure he's keen to the task.
In fact, you can cap your own.
I can come out? Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. It's also nice to just kind of gently try to pour it down the side, again, in context of trying to preserve and keep the bubbles as prevalent as possible. You know, it kind of kills me if I see somebody working it through a funnel, just agitating it, because
That's somebody's off from me.
like with what's the saying? I don't know. I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere that when you're drinking bubbly wine, you're paying for every $5, you're paying $1 for the wine and $4 for the bubbles. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, kind of. What? So how much would it cost you to make a cocktail like that, and the putting bottle, and the people wanted to do that?
If people were so inclined to do this for themselves, you can get away with. I mean, I think probably at this point, maybe the most expensive thing in this cocktail are the limes. As you may or may not know, there's this weird lime shortage, and prices for limes for us have jumped about fivefold. It's to the point where a lot of places in San Francisco, even around here, will omit using limes altogether, or they will have an additional surcharge for any things that include lime.
It actually, cases got up above $100 for a case of limes for about a month there, but now it's come way back down.
Coming back down?
Yeah, it's not quite half that yet, but that's about 3.5 times what it used to be. I was just at Whole Foods last night though, and it was they still have them for $4 for $1. So.
That's a pretty good looking little bottle.
Yes, exactly. And it's something that is, while it's becoming more and more prevalent, it's still a bit of a novelty, and I think it's great. In fact, we offer these by the bucket, a bucket of 4. You get a little reduced rate, and I don't think, I think this is something that would engender a lot of envy for your dining neighbors if they saw you with a bucket of these guys over here.
So how long? So you put this in bottle. You already take it off from the cava, this bottle of cava here. How long can you keep it?
As I said before, we're especially with this drink, we want to have something that's very, very broadly appealing, and I think we've done that. So I would say no longer than about 2 days, which is never a problem for us. We're bottling these literally every day, and as you'll see, they retain their bubbles. They're bright, they're effervescent, they're all too easy to suck down.
I'm going to do that.
Please do. I would encourage you to do so. One tip that I would encourage people is to, for the purposes here, we couldn't do it as retentively as we'd like to, I suppose. Try to have all the ingredients as cold as possible, especially via the cava. As we know, CO2 stays dissolved in cold solution much more readily than in warm solutions. So even the mint, the syrup, the water, if you're going to add a little bit of water to it, make sure all of those items are as cold as possible so you retain as much effervescence. So it might be a little bit of movie magic.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
But also because we just bottled them. But if these were to sit overnight, they'd be perfectly great the next day. But that's never really a problem with us. Like I said, we're literally bottling these every day. We're always using a fresh bottle of cava for that very reason. We want to have things that are as bright, bubbly, and delicious as possible.
But so you find those bottles anywhere, or where will you go for that? And the caps.
If fermentation.
If you're,
but people watching us.
I would say
where you go? People from Kansas or
you
from
can.
where will?
I would imagine these would be widely available on the internet. As Phil mentioned, we're lucky enough to have a great fermentation store, or home brewing store here in our backyard. In fact, kind of like a stone throw away from here.
Yeah.
So we're able to find these split bottles, these 187 ounce bottles, pretty readily. It helps to have the community that's so focused on brewing and venting and all that kind of stuff that we take it for granted. The availability of this kind of stuff at our fingertips, at our leisure. But I would imagine a general internet search would find find these things pretty easily.
Brewery around the country, people it should be available there, right?
Which is something that we highly advocate. There's all sorts of great craft breweries, great distilleries. The culture of drinking has been elevated across the board, and I'm sure somewhere around you there must be somebody whose brain you can tap, whether it's a brewing club or an actual brewery. You go in there, you talk to the people. It's like with cooking. Go into the market, talk to your butcher, talk to your greengrocer, talk to the wine buyers. Get friendly with these people. They'll have a lot of great advice for you. And so that's what I'd recommend. And when all else fails, check the internet. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
So what's going on nowadays, Fagiani? Keeping busy?
Summer.
Yeah. Summer.
Yeah, it's official. Still some more changes to come. Been switching things up a little bit, but really just moving along nicely and having a lot of fun. I mean, it's obviously a luxury to be able to have the patio upstairs, have the third floor bar, be able to just open things up, and we're actually, chef's going to be whole roasting a pig for 4th of July all day long. We're going to start in the morning, and then by dinner service time for anybody coming to join us for the 4th of July, we'll have the option to come up, take the big portion of pig right off the carving board, and then bring that on down. We're going to fill you up with just summer barbecue sides.
Using the Carachina?
Exactly.
Hey.
Indeed, we're going to set that right up on the roof. Knock on wood, all goes well with the fire department, but we'll be just fine. That'll start at 5:30 service, but we're going to be up there roasting it all day. So during the day, if you want to come up, grab some drinks and hang out, we'll have the pig roasting, and it's going to smell really good. We did it last year, and it was so much fun.
That's delicious. Like a little bit more cold, of course, but
sure. But you can see where it has those similarities with the mojito, but deeper and broader breadth of flavor.
What about if you were leaving because you have to drink it right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about if you were leaving a leaf of a mint?
We talked about it actually.
You did?
Well, okay. The problem with that is that it's difficult to extract after you've consumed the bottle.
So you're not going to reuse the bottle, are you? People
Well,
are drinking it. I mean, you watch it.
We reuse our glassware and our knives and our plateware. Of course, we're going to reuse our bottles. These cost money, baby. These cost money, baby.
Yeah, we put them right in the racks and rinse them through.
Yeah,
and they come back.
Absolutely. So they go through the. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They go through the same cleaning process that anything else that we use to eat or drink with: glasses, forks, knives, spoons, plates. I think we should. Give these a nice once over.
Folks at home, the bottles about $1 a piece. Bacardi should be able to. This Bacardi 8. This is kind of cool. Despite what Bacardi has around it, this is one of the longest standing rum recipes in the world. So you can get this. It should be like $35 at a liquor store. Juice your own limes. That's easy enough. I mean, even if you're just making it for a small party at home, not necessarily for a full scale bar program. You can just get a hand juicer if you get some nice ripe limes, and that's all good. Mint syrup is just basically
standard hand juicer that you can buy at Safeway is one of the best.
Yeah,
one of the best things that I use at my house all the time. It's great. In fact, sometimes I even sneak it into the bar.
Yeah,
we can't find specific parts of our fancy juicer, so we have to go a little rustic on it. But yeah, standard hand juicer. The yellow or the green one that you can find at Safeway they're great. They work perfectly.
And one more question for me. Let's say the 4th of July is coming up, and if I wanted to have, 24 of those, can I call and come and pick it up?
It depends.
Take them out?
Take them out, yeah.
To my party.
On the record, absolutely not.
No.
On the record, okay. So I get that.
In that case, we might have to increase the size of the bottles a little bit.
Yeah.
No, that's I don't want people to get drunk, but that's to kind of relax and serve it super chill, and I think it would be really cool.
Yeah, no. If you wanted to do them at the restaurant, absolutely. We can't do them to go.
Okay.
For liquor license rules. That's why I say on the record. But if you wanted to pre-order, we'll make them for you for sure. It's easy enough.
That's fantastic. Hey, I really appreciate it. Man.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, very different, and
sure.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to quickly move on and talk about one more thing that we've got coming up for the fall. In fact, we'd kicked around the idea of actually barreling down on a cocktail on screen here, but between bringing in cases of booze and then hauling out a full barrel afterwards, we're putting together a cocktail for the fall, which is going to be a barreled Apple Manhattan. So within that, we will have featured Michter's Rye Whiskey, Laird's Bonded Applejack, and then Cokie Torino Vermouth. Very straightforward cocktail, but when you elevate it and put it in a barrel, you get that charred oak, those baking spice flavors, mapley goodness, and all of those things. It really starts to hit home those flavors for fall. So that's going to be something that we're going to be doing within the next week or so, getting that ready to go, give it 3 months, and then around about October 1st or so, we'll release it right in time for all of the apple harvests that we have up to the north and around us. But to get us there, Andrew's already working on a couple of things that are going to go in the drink from a garnish perspective, and just as a little sneak peek for what's coming, he's going to make up for us a batch of the drink's main garnish visually that you see, and of course get the taste afterwards too.
Sure. So we're going to talk about a few of the supporting cast members outside of the items that Phil has mentioned already. That's going to make up the bulk of the drink. We have, of course, a combination of rye and vermouth. We're going to give it that great fall influence with some apple brandy, which is just what it sounds like. It's utterly delicious. As long as you have apple cider, you distill it. You have apple brandy. There's a great culture of it in northwestern France, in the area of Normandy, and there's been a great history of it in colonial United States. I think everybody knows about Johnny Appleseed, but I think what they don't know is that he was on a quest to go out to proselytize and spread the good word of apples, not necessarily for their consumption in and of themselves, but for cider making. So thank you, Mr. Appleseed.
They used to serve the Applejack to Revolutionary War soldiers.
Yeah, take it easy, buddy. Take it easy, buddy. So when we have something that's this sort of level of endeavor, we want to consider all aspects of it. Glassware, garnish, anything that we can influence to make it a bit more elevated, interesting, personal. We're going to try to do that as much as possible. So right now, we are in the throes of one of my favorite times of year. Stone fruit season is the best. Cherries, plums, apricots, peaches, nectarines. They are, in my opinion, the best eating fruits ever. I just love them. And so right now we have these great Rainier cherries. I got these at the market. These are local, organic Rainier cherries, and they're just, I don't know, they're just so delicious. I don't know how else to articulate how much I like these guys. And they're beautiful. And traditionally with a Manhattan, you're going to want to serve some brandy cherries or preserved cherries. Obviously, you want to stay away from the neon red or neon green maraschino cherries that you have seen, luckily, fall kind of by the wayside in the past handful of years. So what we're going to do to prepare this is we're going to use this handy-dandy cherry pitter. Phil didn't believe me when I told him that I had an actual cherry pitter. He thought I was just putting him on. It's just as simple as it looks. You have a little, I don't know what you call this, a dial. Just pushes out the pits right through the bottom. There you have a perfectly pitted cherry. As much as possible, I like to have garnishes that, while are delicious and seasonal and interesting, you always want to try to eliminate as much mess as possible. While these would be delicious on their own, whole, even with a stem, I think that'd look really cool. What are they going to do with it when they're done? They're going to leave it on the bar somewhere and create more clutter and junk for me to clean up and to get in their neighbor's way. So let's just eliminate that process for them. The other thing that this is going to do for us is increase the amount of surface area, because I'm not sure if I've alluded to my point just quite yet. We're going to be preserving this, if all goes well. This could be a huge, colossal failure. We'll see. I'm going to be preserving this in a combination of sugar and brandy. Not just any brandy. No. We're going to be using Kirschwasser, or Kirsch, which is a cherry eau de vie. So if you were to make cherry juice, ferment it, distill it, you have cherry eau de vie. And that's all I have to say about that. So we have our cherries. They have the increased surface area because they have this great little cavity in them. I'm sure somebody probably want to stuff that with blue cheese. But that's a rant for a different time. So I have this really cool thing that I found on the market. This is awesome. I have no idea how they make these, but these are awesome maple flakes. I'm not sure if they add stabilizers or what they do exactly to make maple into flakes, but it's essentially, and I have a little pulverized thing here, get this process going. Basically, I'm just going to take some of this, essentially like maple sugar, and just coat all this action here. And so it's going to coat the inside, the outside. It's going to start leaching out some of that great, delicious juice within the cherry. And as we know, when making preserves or things along those lines, sugar, salt, they're very important when preserving things because they're antimicrobials, which is kind of weird. You need it at a certain threshold. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I need to revisit my books. But I have a batch here that I've already kind of started. So these have been macerated in some of that same maple flake powder. And I really wish you could smell this because it smells pretty awesome. I'm going to coat those as much as possible. I already have a batch going here. As you can see, got the label and everything. And I'm going to throw them in there with the rest of their fellows. Hit them with some more of that sugar. And just in case this wasn't the right amount of sugar, in case this was in fact a microbial friendly amount of sugar where it's going to turn rancid and funky and ferment or be something terrible, we're going to take the added precaution of adding the aforementioned Kirschwasser. So this is a really great producer from Oregon, Clear Creek Distillery, pioneer in the industry. Don't have enough great things to say about these guys. They make all sorts of wonderful fruit eau de vie, poire, the Kirsch. They make actually a really outstanding malt whiskey that, if you didn't know any better, you would probably mistake for single malt whiskey from Islay. It's got that great smoky pungency to it. McCarthy, something McCarthy. Steve McCarthy? That's something. I forget the name. Anyway, badass dude. Badass dude, makes some delicious stuff. So we're just going to top this up till everything's relatively submerged with sugar and with brandy. Sugar and brandy, nothing wrong with that. And so hopefully we will put these away for a little while, and when we revisit them, we will have brandy cherries that are so delicious and will be a great way to experience something that nobody else will really have, because cherry season will have gone out of season by that point. In fact, we'll be into the season of apples, the whole point of why we're doing this. A little bit of foresight in terms of the main body, the main thrust of what we're trying to do, as well as featuring something that was seasonally available at one point, but is no longer something that's accessible. In addition to this hopefully interesting, delicious garnish, still have my fingers crossed, there's a lot of things that could go awry. It's my first time doing this. It's just going off the cuff. We're going to be featuring rather unique bitters. While you could certainly go with a lot of different styles of bitters, like I said before, the accessibility of bitters right now is through the roof. With something like this that we think will probably be pretty interesting and garner a good amount of interest, we want to have as much hands-on, I don't know, manipulation is the right word, but hands-on involvement as possible. So we're going to feature bitters flavored with candy cat mushrooms. If you've never had candy cat mushrooms, I don't feel bad for you, but I kind of do, because they're really, really awesome. They're really, really awesome. We're so lucky, so blessed to be here in Northern California and have just so many things available at our fingertips. Like I said before, we take it for granted just how much accessibility to products, to equipment, to knowledge. It's really, really a great place to be if you're into food, into wine, into cocktails, into beer. Anywho, I'm sure it's great where you live too. So, candy cat mushrooms. We have this really, really wonderful mushroom purveyor, Connie Green, and she has an amazing selection of mushrooms. The very first time I ever had my candy cat mushroom experience was at the now Goose and Gander Bar and Restaurant, which is a really, really wonderful destination. Before it was called Martini House, and they used to have these really, really awesome mushroom dinners where the local mushroom forager and purveyor, Connie Green, who is one of the coolest chicks ever, she's walking around talking about the different mushrooms that she had harvested here, there, thither, and hither, and the different properties that they had. And they always finished with a candy cap dessert, candy cap panna cotta, candy cap bread pudding, and they're so awesome. Basically, the mushrooms smell like maple syrup. It's so weird, and it's so awesome. And we're going to be featuring a house-made bitters that features that as the main constituent of its flavoring profile. In terms of the bittering quality, we're actually bittering it with burdock roots. And then there are some other flavors in there that will really accentuate and sync up nicely with all of the other flavors in there. I wasn't necessarily setting out to go for these flavors. They were just things that I found in the market that were available, including toasted coconut, vanilla pods, cocoa beans, I think coriander. Coriander's always good. Coriander's, it's like the mustard of the spice world. It goes great in everything. I love mustard. Anyway, so we're going to be featuring candy cap bitters, house made, in addition to the combination of apple brandy and Michter's. Is it rye? You're doing rye, right? Michter's single barrel rye. This really awesome vermouth from Turin, or Torino, as they say in Italia, and garnished with these cool little cherries. Hopefully these turn out. These will be really cool if they turn out. We'll see. Otherwise, we might have to make like some mushy apple or some mushy cherry pie. In any event, those are some things that we have currently, as well as on the horizon. I hope these things engender some interest in the drinking culture around here, as well as outside of the Napa Valley. And as mentioned before, go out there, talk to your local purveyors when it comes to beer and wine and spirits and comestibles such as cheese. They're a surly lot. You don't want to talk to them. Such as your cheesemongers, your butchers, your greengrocers. We're at a point now where there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of accessibility. Go out there, have some fun.